Hello again, and welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Rural Report. I am your Rural 2IC, and today I'm going to tell you my personal three-step approach when it comes to preparedness. So, if you're new to this channel, I try and tend to help the people that's just getting started, the people that's thinking about becoming into preparedness, joining the community, the people that have already started and they're still going through the short and the kind of medium range people, as well as some people that's been doing this for quite a long time. So if you're new here, welcome. Everybody else, great to see you. Now, and mine is going to be the first one. This is going to be what I call the reactionary. This is that short term. This is that kind of 1 to 3 day sort of things. And this is one of the things that, if you're just starting out, you may want to focus on the most, because this is what is going to be that initial first stage to whatever happens. Now, this goes anything from a personal SHTF clear up to, the biggest balloon goes up sort of event, right? So, what am I talking about? Well, you go through each and everything. If it's you have something medical, do you have an IFAC or an individual first aid kit? Can you react to whatever's happening, to where you need to keep the blood inside the body? You need to close a wound. You need to be able to treat something. It's a reactionary thing. Food, do you have something on hand that you can use for calories and nutrients? Can you make it to where you can stay alive for 1 to 3 days? Same thing with water. Do you have something to where you can go through that very short time? You are in that reactionary mode. Something happened, and now you need to make sure that you remain alive for that small amount of time. Now, whether that is something along the lines of where am I going to sleep? That can be anything from a car to a tent, or something like that. How do I stay warm? Well, it's having a Bic lighter or a handful of matches or something like that. It's the little tiny preps, and this is often the cheapest and kind of the easier thing, because you're only shooting for that small amount of time. Forget anything past 3 days, okay? And we can have a very short term. Even if you're thinking natural disaster, you're thinking of, tornado or hurricane or whatever, you have that window of time to where you need to be reactionary to whatever the event is. And you need to make sure that you have your basic needs met for 1 to 3 days. Then, once you have that, okay, and you go through everything: food, water, shelter, protection, medical, every piece of everything, and go through your everyday life, it doesn't necessarily have to be the thing that absolutely you must have. Once you get those needs met to where this is what I absolutely have to have to stay alive, you can move on to a little bit more of the comfort things. You know, in those 1 to 3 days, do I have a pick me up? Do I have something that I can snack on? Do I have a little bit of candy squirreled away? How am I going to do laundry, wash dishes, little things like that? you know, in 1 to 3 days, do you necessarily have to do laundry? Probably not. Would it be nice to be able to do so? Yeah, it would. And so think about all those little things. And again, you're shooting for a very short time. Moving on is going to be with that kind of long term, if you will. So this is, for me, this is anything that's going to last up to 6 months, maybe even a year. Okay. So somewhere that's less than a year. This is where it starts getting a little bit more and might be the most expensive part of preparedness, because this is where you squirrel away all of your needs for everything. So, if you already went through and you had some sort of a trauma event medically, You pull out your IFAC and you get it done. That's your short term, okay? Well, the whatever the event is, it's still happening. Do you have the necessary things in order to keep that small little kit restocked throughout that next 6 months to a year? Because if you use it and you don't have the necessary things to be able to replenish it, now you're completely out of that kit. Do you have the necessary medical items to sustain them? When you get some sort of a trauma injury, say it's a laceration of the arm or leg or something like that, you got the bleeding to stop and things, but the event is still going on. Wound care takes a lot of supplies, okay? You have to make sure things are sterile and clean. There's a lot of gauze for wound packing. There's a lot that goes into it. It's the same thing with food. Do you have the necessary long term shelf stable food items tucked away? Same thing with water. Same thing with everything. Now, again, you once you get those basic, you have to have food, you have to have water, you have to have medical things like that, okay? And it's going to go into protection and then every other part of preparedness. Then you move on to your comfort things. Do you have a book or something to entertain, games, things like that? um, do you have a way to maintain power, whatever that is, short term, that 1 to 3 days sort of thing? That's having a couple of batteries tucked away, or maybe one of them tiny little solar panel, battery backup sort of things. Once you get past that initial 1 to 3 days, now you're talking about something like a solar generator, or even just a fuel generator or something like that. There goes into that longer period of time. And that's why, for me, this is that kind of more expensive thing, because this is where things get pricey. This is where things start getting into the bulk of all of your preps and supplies and things like that. And so you not only have to have the finances to be able to gather all these, but you also have to have the space to be able to store them away and store them properly, right? And so there's a lot of thought process. There's a lot of planning. You can't just buy bulk things on a whim. At least most of us cannot, right? You have to have some sort of planning of, what am I going to do with this? Sometimes it's, how am I going to save up the money and things? And my advice for a lot of that is, especially on the finances and things like that, is do small attainable goals. Okay, set those goals, make them small, so that way as you reach, you can build. Don't shoot right out of the gate that you want a year's supply of water. Put down that every 2 weeks you buy an extra case of water, or at least around where I am, you can get a case of water for less than $5, depending on the size of the case of water. And so that's an extra $5 every time that you go to the store. Maybe you already buy a case, make it 2 cases. Take one, pack it away. Make sure you're rotating and things like that. I know I'm going to get some of those people, but do little things like that. Buy an extra couple cans of food, buy an extra bag of flour, things like that. And you will see over time, as the weeks and the months progress, you will end up going through and you will see your preps start to expand and grow. Now, once you get that to that stage, and that's probably where you're going to spend a decent amount of your time, now you're talking about your actual thriving, the long term part of this is that 6 months to a year. If anything happens and you are past that year and there's no sign, it's not going to be 13 months and it's over. If the balloon goes up and that year mark hits and everything's exactly the same as from day one when the balloon went up in the first place, now you're starting to get into where you have to get into your residuals. How do you maintain? Because you don't have, let's say you don't have power, the power company's gone, the grid's down. You don't have running water per se. You don't have basically all the luxuries of life. And so, how are you going to take that sustainment period, that this is what life is going to be like? Now, it may only be for 2 or 3 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, who knows? But that is, how are you going to replenish everything? So, most of us, we're not going to have 10 years of water. Okay. And I know people's going to say, well, I have a well and this and that and everything. I get it. I get it. Uh, Something could happen to that well. You know, you should have backup to your backup to your backup. Uh, I mean, personally, it's, you should have five. You should have your pace, or, so you should have your primary, you should have your alternate, you should have your contingency, you should have your emergency. And then, if you can, come up with that fifth one in case everything fails. It's what I call my last ditch effort, right? So, how are you going to sustain yourself? Because I would say 99% of anybody that's watching this, you are not going to have a year's worth of food. You're not going to have a year's worth of just about anything on hand. So, how are you going to do it? And yes, you need to focus on the things that's going to keep you alive. That's your food, water, shelter, things like that, and your medical supplies. But it's also some comforts, okay? Because you don't want to have it to where, especially if you're talking about a year out, that you're just waking up to, go through and work like a dog all day long just to stay alive, only to go to bed, completely exhausted, and get up the next day. You need to have a little bit of time to where you can laugh, you can relax, you can get your mind off things. Stress is a killer. And, whatever happens, whatever the event is going to be, it's already going to be stressful enough. You're already going to be in a very altered emotional state. And we'll get into the mental aspects of SHTF later. But you need to make sure that you prep for you. Prepping is very, very personal. It's very, very different. There is no cookie cutter, one size fits all to this. uh, the only rules, that are constant is you have to have food, you have to have water. You have to have that. There's nobody that's going to go a whole year without food and water, right? So there is a few constants. But when it comes to everything else, you're going to have somebody that's going to say you have to have books. You have to have books because they'll take your mind off. If you're not a reader, or let's say you're illiterate, you don't know how to read, books probably aren't going to be that good for you, right? Um, and you got to find out what it is that you like to do, and what actually will work. And, it's one of those ones. Forget what everybody else says. You got to figure out what it is for you. Maybe you like art. Okay. Do you have enough pencils, or charcoal, or, crowns, whatever it is, that you can do your art? People knit or crochet. Do you have enough material that you can do stuff, so that way it'll keep your mind off of things? There's a lot that goes into this, and I think people don't give it its due justice on how important it is. But to kind of scale this back and go from square one again, I would focus on your short reactionary first, okay? Because if you don't have a way to react, you may not make it past to enjoy all the other stuff. You can have all the different skids of water and food, you can have the latest and greatest gear, you can have all this stuff, but if you can't react in that moment when something happens, then what's the point of it, okay? That's my question to you. If you don't have that reactionary, uh, you know, all these things like get home bags, bug out bags, and stuff. A lot of those are just reactionary things. They're helpful. You should probably have them. If you don't have them, you need to get home. Getting home usually for the most part is 1 to 3 days. A bug out bag. I'm getting wherever I am currently, and I need to get to this location, and here's my bag specifically set up by me that'll help me get to there. I'm bugging out. Okay. It's all personal. It's what you pick out. It's what you want. And that's where a lot of people go in. And I'm not going to get off on the tangent of a bug out bag. Okay. Because all of us have made the mistake of building a bug out bag that's 800 pounds. When you get it inside your mind that it's not a, what do you want to call it? It's not an inch bag. And even then, I don't want to call it an inch bag, which stands for I'm never coming home. Uh, any bag that you take, you shouldn't have it to where your life is now in that bag. You should have it to where it is a tool that is going to help me and assist me, aid me to get to another location. That's all it should be meant to do. So you don't need 800 books of matches. You don't need 10 pounds of food. You don't need all of that. You need to figure out what it is that if I am here and my bug out location is 100 miles away, what things do I need to put in that bag that'll get me to that location? You know, put it out on the thing on a day's walk. How far can the average human walk in a single day? Then you probably should double it, if not triple it, just so that way you can go through it and have the different things that are unforeseen. But you should also, when you get into it, that medium range, do you have the things? And you need to make sure that you have it all covered. Okay, I have all this food. Okay, what happens if you can't cook? What happens if you can't start a fire for some reason? What happens if something happens to your water supply and it's going to take you a couple days to find a different water supply, so you can't boil water? Do you have things that you can just pop the top and eat? uh, there's a lot that goes into this that I think a lot of people don't give it. They pick something up immediately and they go, I have this MRE. It's not problem solved. Okay. There's a whole bunch of other things that go along with every single everything. And get me, I know it. You cannot prepare for everything, but you should have backup plan after backup plan after backup plan. And I know it's going to get, especially if you're new, it's going to seem very daunting, like it can't be done. It can, okay? Just, again, small, attainable goals. And you will get in the rhythm. And before you know it, you're just going to take off and you're going to be good. So, I've talked way longer than I had planned on. So, if you made it to this far, guess what? You rock. I appreciate you spending a little bit of time with me. I hope you guys got a little bit of this out. Something, maybe entertainment, if not, some information or whatnot. But I hope you have an amazing day. I hope you have a blessed day. And I want to remind you to remain united because we're all prepping this together.